Hi, everybody. Are you guys on? Can you see me? I don't see anybody's popping up with answers, whether you're here or not here, or where you are. Trying to set this one so you can see. Let's see. Let me ask Terry. Am I on? Can you type so I know you are on? Ah, okay, I see. Yeah. Several people coming on. That's super cool. So I can see. Of course, the camera is blocking my view, but I can see. I can see Lucretia, Terry, Amy. Cool, super cool. So let's wait until other people are joining in. And it's a little bit early, so I just wanted to set up to see. Yeah, we still have a few minutes. I wanted to see if, and can you also hear me, by the way? Let me know if you can hear me. Can anybody respond if you can hear me? Hi, Allison. Everybody's there. Okay. Yes, okay, so you guys can hear me. Awesome. Very good. Okay, so let's see other people coming on. We got to change between glasses and no glasses. Hi, Amy. Hi, Laura. Awesome. Yes, Laura. The other Laura. We have several Lauras. Wow. Okay. Who is this person? It doesn't want to come up. Pamela. Hi, Pamela. There you go. Slowly, people coming in. Somebody just joined. Edwina. Hello. It's too bad that only I can talk and you guys cannot talk. That's just too bad. Oh, I see other people coming on and this thing is not moving. Okay. Oh, there is Dave. Hi, Dave. Hi, Catherine. Awesome. Hi, Phoebe. I hope I pronounced your name right. I'll give it a couple of more minutes so more people can come in. Anybody, if you come in, do send a note that you're in so I know that you're in. Lisa. Hi, Lisa O'Brien. Pascal, made it from the UK. Awesome. Welcome. Debbie Bennett. Hello. Okay, so we are quite a few of us. So let me start. I'm going to start by answering some of the questions. So the first question that I answer is from Stella, and I don't know if Stella is on yet. Jojo, hi Jojo. Stella was asking, I would like to know the difference between a migraine and a cluster headache. So let's talk a little bit about migraine and a little bit about cluster headache. Migraine is very different from cluster headache. Cluster headache is actually not a migraine. It has nothing to do with it. Granted, there are some people who have both, but the majority of cluster headache people don't have migraines, and the majority of migraineurs don't have clusters. So it's a completely different disease, or not disease, but condition. We don't actually know what cluster headache is. There's no research. I mean, there's a lot of research on it, but nobody can tell what it is. And what they're discovering is that it is so different that it cannot actually be pinned down. It's also a lot of people respond to it differently. It can be caused by injury, perhaps. The protocol we so far found with a handful of people who had cluster headaches as well as migraines so far in the past 4.5 years. they found that their cluster headaches improved. It could completely be coincidental because I've never worked on cluster headaches. Mind you, I did have one for about 1 minute, and I know what that is like. But that was also, I can't actually relate to it. What is known, medically known, is that if you use oxygen at the first side, the first stab that you get in your eye, if you use oxygen, then it can help. There's a film about that, and also you can have your doctor prescribe oxygen. With that said and done, oxygen in a tank is kind of difficult to carry around. That's not something you want to do. So if you have cluster headaches, I recommend that you get oxygen canisters so you can carry that with you. And if you get a stab, you just move into the bathroom or restroom or somewhere and start using oxygen. So I hope that that will help. And triptans supposedly help. If that's the case, then also have a cup of coffee instead of triptan. So that would be addressing cluster headaches. Then from Laura Riley, the question is about the children. What age is good to start the protocol? And can you give me an idea of the balanced and tracked meal? Well, given that migraine doesn't differentiate between age groups, right? So we have children from age 2 all the way up to age 90, adults all have migraine, all caused by the same thing. It's all genetic, it's all the same thing. So there really isn't, excuse me, such a thing as a good time or bedtime for starting the protocol. If you discover that your child or grandchild is a migraineur, start it right away. There is a saying that, oh, well, kids need to grow and therefore they need carbohydrates. Well, we kind of know better, right? Carbohydrates are non-essential nutrients. They really aren't nutrients at all. We don't need them. We don't need to eat them. Therefore, we don't need them for growth. Yes, we can grow this way from them, and that's super good if you want to get fatter, but it has nothing to do with growing taller. It has nothing to do with your organs growing, your muscles getting bigger, your bones getting stronger. All of the things that develop the body into a strong body, be it a child, adult, or whoever else, really is based on only the essential nutrients, which would be your proteins, or that is amino acids, all 20 that we can get from our food, and fats, which are the fatty acids, both omega-3 and omega-6. So, and water and some minerals like salt, magnesium, so forth. So if you want to feed your child vegetables for the magnesium, you can. You can also get magnesium from animal products. So it's not like they don't exist, because after all, animals eat the plants, and that is how humans are supposed to be gaining their magnesium. You can supplement it as well, depending on the age of the child. There's an RDA for magnesium. So yes, you can start a 2-year-old on the protocol. It really is a healthier diet. Can the child eat any carbs? Of course. You have to know what the threshold of the pain is. So if the child gets a headache after eating an apple, don't give the child an apple. You have to find out what the actual good amount of carbohydrates is that the child can tolerate, just like you do for yourself in the group when you do your protocol. The next question is from Bart Wendell. So how would you summarize what you discovered about diagnosing migraine brain in very young children so that parents can respond as early as possible? So this question connects to the previous one, but I wanted to tell you a story that I think happened once or twice. I don't remember how many times in the group, where somebody joined the group, the protocol group, and you know, the little image that they have of themselves for the Facebook page is their children or their grandchildren. And oftentimes I would look, when I admit a person, or when Christine or Terry admits a person, I look at the person of what does a person look like? Is he or she really with a smaller eye? And 90% of the time I can see on a photo that it is, if there's a photo. But oftentimes they choose the photo of their children or grandchildren. And I have discovered a couple of times that the child, one of the children may have migraine. And I actually notified the mother or grandmother in this case that I think that the child has a migraine. And she responded, yeah, indeed, she's been getting a lot of headaches. And that was a child maybe about 4 or 5 years old. So you can see on the child the change in the eye size. So pay attention to that. It's very difficult to discover that. You can't see mine now because I salted up pretty good, but toward the end of the 1 hour, maybe my eye size is going to change and you're going to be able to see that. It took me, well, I'm 65 now, and I didn't discover that my eyes were a different size until my husband told me that about 5 or 6 years ago. Now I can see it, but it is something that you really have to pay attention to because it isn't permanent. So your eye size changes, and you need to be able to discover the change, which is really minor at the very beginning. So observe your child, take photos of the child. I could see when I pulled back photos from my childhood that I've never ever noticed before that one of my eyes was sometimes smaller, sometimes not even before I turned age 1. And for sure, I didn't have any pain yet, but I already had some of the symptoms of a migraine brain. So I'm not sure when it develops, but you can certainly see that it is developing. Another sign would be we have, for example, one boy in the group who vomits continuously. So that would be the cyclic vomiting syndrome. That is what I also had when I was a child. They always thought I had some kind of an intestinal infection, but now I understand that actually what I had was a cyclical vomiting syndrome, and that is the precursor to migraine brain as well. So the next question is from Catherine Bell, Van Dyke, is it, or Van Dyke? I don't know how to pronounce it. So she's asking, I would like more discussion on monitoring how much salt to take in on a regular basis and how to tell if you need potassium or sodium, and scenarios where one or the other is likely. Well, most of that is answered in our book, of course, and we have a lot of discussions about that in the group. So all of these answers can be found. But just want to discuss just for a second is that this is why we have the sodium test, so the salt test, where you take a itty bitty salt amount, really just a few salt crystals, and put it under your tongue. If it eases your symptoms within 15 minutes or so, then you need sodium. If it doesn't ease it, or if it makes it worse, you definitely need potassium. If it doesn't ease it at all, but it doesn't make it worse, it's just sort of stable, you may need water. You may need all potassium, sodium, and also a little bit of carbohydrates. It's just something, it's a combination. You have to sort of experiment because everybody is different. For example, in my case, I have yet to have a case other than this one time when I really salted up for flying to a high altitude, thinking that I'm getting into a lower barometric pressure, which turned out to be totally false. And I salted up. So I had too much salt and I ended up with a migraine. And I needed to then eat a lot of potassium-rich foods, which was very difficult because I was not at home. I was in Colorado. And that's a mile-high city, not exactly known to eat the healthiest foods. So if for me, for example, it is always salt, nearly without exception. So we all can kind of sort of learn what we need most of. Would it be mostly sodium, mostly potassium? It depends greatly also on your general diet. What are you eating? If you're eating a lot of processed foods, there's a very great likelihood that you will be needing potassium. If you're eating a lot of whole foods, then the chances of you needing potassium are pretty much slim, because whole foods are full of potassium. So then you will need salt. In terms of the only time when there is a potential for sodium only and not even water is if you eat carbs, be it your regular, I'm not talking about sugar, I'm talking about carbs that are protocol friendly, but maybe it didn't sit right, or you ate too much, or you ate it too fast, so you didn't eat enough fat or protein within. And then you have to take a salt. So we call that the salting. So then you just take a salt, 1/8 of a teaspoon salt, and no water, just a sip to return all the water that will end up in your edema. She's also asking suggestions for fat and zero carb diet. Well, fat and zero carb diet would be all animal fat. So I hope I don't need to list all of them, but that would be your typical animal fats. And another question is, that's an interesting one, is Angela as a brain worker, and I like that brain worker. Do you find you need more salt or other support when you're working intensely on your research? Say, yes, I do, or my writing. Whenever you do any kind of work, be it physical work, mental work, any kind of work that puts a lot of energy requirement on your brain and on your body, you will need to increase salt, and you also need to increase your food. When I write a book or do a lot of research, I literally get hungry, a lot hungrier than other times. And that's because I'm using a lot of energy, not just salt, but energy. I also need to drink more water and need to take more salt. And so just to give you a comparison, when I work out in the gym, and you all know I work out very hard with weightlifting and also kickboxing. So I burn typically 500 plus calories per hour, according to my little meters. So I don't know if I can trust them, but if I can trust them, that's what I burn. And so what that means is I just lost that many calories. And so if I'm hungry, I can eat that or more or less, it doesn't matter. But I also lose a lot of salt. So before workout, during workout, and after workout, in grand total, in preparation for my workout, before, during, and after, I usually consume within 1 hour from the workout 2 salt pills, 2 glasses of water. During the workout, 3 salt pills, 3 glasses of water. So 5 salt pills and 5 glasses of water. Salt pill, my salt pill is Health by Principle, which is a little bit more than a teaspoon, an eighth of a teaspoon salt. It's 360 milligrams sodium. So, and that is for an exercise. Now, when I don't exercise and I work on papers or projects or anything like that, I find that by the end of the day, I had nearly as much, typically exactly as much salt and water as I do when I work out. So overall, and depending upon for how many hours I actually work out, I will require nearly as much salt and water as I do when I work out. So it is a mental workout. Consider your muscles in your brain. Brain is a muscle, right? So then, Mandy, we have 2 Mandys. So Mandy Payton Parker asked, if the sodium potassium pump is broken intracellularly, and if intermittent fasting or autophagy takes place, is it possible that we would actually be cured by intermittent fasting and replacing all of our cells? Or is that the DNA, or is it our DNA, meaning mitochondrial DNA, already has the issue when the cell replicates? I hope this makes sense. Okay, so let me explain. This implies that something needs to be repaired. So if something needs to be repaired, that means something is sick, correct? So given that migraine is not a disease, it is not even a variant, because if you read in the book, I'm discussing that probably based on the excitability of the migraine brain and that we're on alert, the migraine brain is the original human brain. That's the original mammalian brain, because look around your pets, everybody, their ears are moving, their eyes are, like, cats are famous for sleeping with eyes open. There's not much difference between an animal in its sensory organs and a migraineur's sensory organs. It is completely innate to have an alert brain. Now look at a human that is not a migraineur. Can they hear noises that we can? Can they see things that we can peripherally? Can they see better in the dark? Can they smell things that we can? They don't have those organs. So guess who came first? I mean, it's just so logical that in order for humans to survive, we needed these special organs. And in order for these organs to be so sensitized, we needed the different kind of channels, pumps, and ionic gates, because they work a lot more than for the human who can eat carbohydrates. So the modern human that can tolerate carbohydrates is the more adapted one. We are a more ancient one. But it's not an illness, it's not a disease, it's not a problem. This is how we are in order for us to be able to be more alert. This is part of being able to be more alert. So then the question is, well, how come we can't eat carbohydrates and glucose like the modern humans can? Precisely for that reason. We have an ancient brain. And in an ancient time, we didn't eat all those things. We didn't need to have the kind of electrolyte ions and pumps and gates, because we didn't eat carbohydrates, then our electrolytes never really lost their homeostasis. Today, if you eat carbohydrates, your electrolyte will suffer as a result, because glucose has a biochemical capacity of kicking sodium and water out of the cells. Just didn't exist before because you didn't eat any glucose. So at least, I mean, you didn't eat glucose, meaning carbohydrates. And whatever carbohydrates you may have eaten when we were hunters-gatherers, if you look back in the kind of carbohydrates that existed, carrots were like this little, and there was more thorn on it than actual carrot you could eat. There were really no fruits and vegetables that you today would consider to be fruit and vegetables. So what we eat today is completely different from what we ate, I don't know, millions of years ago. So our body didn't get used to eating carbohydrates. Humans have changed a lot since the industrialization and farming and all this kind of changes about 15,000 years ago. A lot of humans changed a lot, and a lot of humans were able to adapt to a lot of things. Look at lactose intolerance, for example. Most of the migrants are lactose tolerant. Does that make us mutated, or the ones, the 80% of the population who is lactose intolerant? So which one is the original and which one is the mutated? So we can't look at what is beneficial to be the original. In this case, for example, the lactose tolerance and intolerance, the lactose intolerance are the original, because humans originally did not have animals to milk and to eat cheese and that kind of stuff. Lactose tolerance was a random mutation in 2 specific groups around the world. There's a scientific article written up on this about 12,000 years ago. It happened all at once. It was a random mutation that stuck. And as a result, the people who are descendants of these 2 tribes, we obviously are lactose tolerant and they can drink. Note that migrants, the majority of migrants are tolerant toward dairy and have no problems consuming them. Over 80% of us are lactose tolerant. But if you look at the large picture for the general population, over 80% are lactose intolerant. So we definitely belong to a different kind of people, and not just in lactose, but in general, our whole brain setup is different. This is just, nobody's ever paying attention to these. These are not things that people talk about, and I'm just sort of kind of connecting the dots here and there. So it's not something that you can find if you search for it, that the migraine being is different, therefore they're also lactose tolerant. You're not going to find that. It's a connection that I have made based on a lot of literature reading. Another question is the kidney brain fog. Okay, that was also from Catherine. So the kidney brain fog, the question was, can you discuss a kidney brain fog a bit more in the meeting? So yes, so kidney brain fog was just an expression that I used. There's no brain fog in the kidney. Kidney is not a brain. However, if you look back all the animal kingdom and go down even the level of the worm, and whatever, I don't know at what level kidney stops being a kidney. Every single animal urinates. So there has to be some form of a kidney. It may not be similar to what we have today, but it's a kidney. It's one of the most primitive organs we all have. And even animals that may not have brain, we're talking about single cell creatures that may not have brain, they still excrete waste material. So you can consider that they have some sort of a mechanism of a kidney. Therefore, because it's such an ancient organ, it really isn't likely to change too much. And if you look back in history, and if you compare the kidneys to humans, to apes, to elephants, to whatever animal you can think of that is not even a mammal, say a reptilian, they will have a very similar functions, maybe looking differently and obviously smaller, but it's going to be the same idea. So kidneys functions change very little over the millennia, or the millions of years, I should say. And so because of this, I'm talking about the brain fog of the kidney, is that when it has to change, when somebody joins a migraine group and doesn't drink water or drinks 1 or 2 glasses of water, and she or he may need 15 a day. If you go from 1 or nothing to 15, the kidney is going to say, it's not going to work. I don't know what to do with this. So the kidney is not an easily adaptable organ. And so this is what I call the kidney brain fog. So consider the kidney permanent brain fog. So if you need to make any changes in your water intake or general fluid intake, salt intake, alcohol intake, things that the kidney particularly doesn't like, then get ready for making those changes slowly. So that is why I am recommending the water increase no faster than half a glass a day. And if you see any kind of changes like edema, retaining water and stepping on the scale and you're suddenly 2 pounds heavier than you were the day before, those are signs that you're increasing the water too fast and your kidney is not able to handle it. So step back to the last time that was okay and stay there for a week until all the water is removed. And then slower continue, rather than a half a glass increase by a quarter of a glass. Changes need to be made slow based on how well your kidney is evolved and developed in terms of being able to adapt. And we are quite different in that. Another question is, should we take salt with every water or not? And that is a question that is quite individual. It seems that everybody needs slightly different amount of salt based on climate, age, activity, gender, obviously, age. Also, what kind of foods you eat. You will need different amount of salt on the protocol diet, on the zero carb diet, on a carnivore diet, or a ketogenic diet, or whatever you eat. Like fasting for those who came more from the keto group. And we can talk about fasting. So you need to kind of sort of see what your sodium level is and then divide it by the number of glasses of water that you drink. And if it comes out to be salt in every water, by all means. And if you find that you need 1/8 teaspoon of salt a day and you drink 10 glasses of water, yeah, make it a little bit less than 1/8 of a teaspoon in every glass. It's totally fine. You can drink it in any which way as long as you pretty much keep it balanced and equal all through the day, that you have about the same amount of salt, particularly the times of the day when you are using your brain more. So to give you an example with mine, every time I can have, right? With mine, I take, for example, before I go to bed, instead of 1 salt or 1/8 teaspoon of salt, I take a salt capsule, as I noted earlier. I take 2, and I take 2 glasses of water with that. That is how I go to bed, because my brain is so active at night that I use up that much. And for those of you who don't know, I tape my mouth at night because I don't like my mouth opens and I dry out, and I don't want to drink at night when I wake up. And in fact, I don't wake up often, don't even go to urinate, in spite of the 2 salt pills and 2 glasses of water. And in the morning, the first thing before I even get out of the bed is another 2 salt pills and 2 glasses of water. So I cover my evening with 4 salt pills and 4 glasses of water. And this is unique to me. And then during the day, every single hour, I take, and that's every single hour, every single glass of water, I take 1 salt pill per glass of water. My minimum at the moment, as my weight is changing, is 10 glasses of water. I find I drink about 11 to 13, depending upon the day, because of the extreme activity, both in brain and also physical activity with the weightlifting and kickboxing. So I need a lot more in general than my minimum. I have not exceeded my maximum, never gone that far, but if I do a lot of activity and a lot of exercise or a lot of work, I may. So it is, but you just have to keep up the salt and water. So in my case, it is, yes, it's 1 salt pill per glass of water. For other people, it may be 2. For some people, maybe half. So experiment. It's totally fine to use 1/16, 1/8. For some people, 1/4 per glass of water. It totally depends on what it is your body requires. So experiment on that. So these are all the questions that I had so far. So let me address a couple of other things that I noted that I will address. And then these will be, I wanted to talk a little bit about insulin resistance and explain it in greater detail. I had a great talk to Krisha the other day about that, and I wanted to pass on some of that information because I think that it is quite helpful and better to understand what insulin resistance is. So first of all, insulin resistance is not a disease. I just want to get that straight. Without insulin being a tiny bit resisted by the body, you can't ever gain weight. If your insulin is not able to make you gain weight, that's pretty much equivalent in terms of your body to a type 1 diabetic who cannot gain any fat, cannot store any fat, cannot really get fatter because insulin is not able to get the glucose into the organs the right way, and it also cannot be depositing the extra glucose to make it into fat by your liver. So in order for you to become fat, you need to have insulin, you need to have lots of insulin, and you need to have a little bit of extra insulin in order for you to be able to put the extra fat away. So insulin resistance is not a disease, but note that insulin resistance in nature, it exists in every animal that hibernates, for example. They kind of fatten up in the summer and the fall, and then they don't eat perhaps in the winter, or they hibernate, whatever. They lose a lot of weight. I was watching a couple of films now just about whales. I had no idea that whales only eat in the summer in the Arctic, and then they move down south somewhere to give birth to their pup, and they don't eat for up to 7 months, anything at all. So think of insulin resistance as an acute seasonal insulin resistance that allows the body to build up fat reserves so that you can deal with the season, be it a famine, be it the animals move to another territory and not in your territory and you can't hunt, be that you have to swim south to give birth to a baby. Whatever the reason is, it is a completely natural thing in the animal kingdom for all animals that for whatever reason, particularly mammals we're talking about here, for whatever reason have seasonality in their food supply. So the insulin resistance itself, as long as it remains seasonal, just like your food supply, you're completely healthy. If you're looking at a bear who piles up to 20,000 calories of food a day in order to get ready for the hibernation, you bet they're nearly diabetic by the time they get to the hibernation. But then they go hibernate and don't eat anything for 6 months. And so in the spring, they come at this thing completely healthy. So insulin was created specifically to handle this kind of a shift in the availability of food. So as long as you're insulin resistant in the fall and in the early winter, you're fine, as long as by the spring you recover. However, in the modern civilization, we don't have a cyclical nature of food source. And so that makes it impossible for us to remain cyclically insulin resistant. So we then go, not cyclically, seasonally. So then we go into what's called a chronic insulin resistance. So chronic insulin resistance is what we all have, is what means is that we have our insulin at a higher level all the time, 24/7, 365 days a year, and every single year. That is unhealthy because at that point, the body has the pancreas that creates the insulin, has a limit of how much insulin it can create. It also has a problem of, okay, so now you have a lot of insulin that you created, and all that insulin is going to grab whatever glucose you have in your body and convert it into fat via the liver, and the liver is going to put it away as triglycerides around your waist and on your legs and around everywhere it can. And then at one point, you're going to be not able to put it away anymore. And the liver is going to say, hold on, I don't want any more glucose in here because I can't convert it to fat and put it away. And that is when the problem starts. That is when you're going to end up getting what's called a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Everybody's familiar with that. That would be when the fat that is converted from the carbohydrates that you ate and not just from carbohydrates, also from protein and fat that you eat. So if you eat more than what you can use right away, it will immediately be converted into a fat and it's going to be put away for future energy. Even while you're eating a meal, obviously none of us runs a marathon at the same time while eating a meal. So you're not using up all the energy immediately. And you can't store protein and fat as fat or glucose as glucose. Your body can't do that. So whatever you eat, if you're using it right away, fine. If you don't, it will be converted into fat. It can only store it as fat. Protein will go into your muscles to help repair cells. Your whole body is made of protein. Your skin is protein. Everything that you can see on you is protein. All your organs are made from protein. Basically everything, including your brain cells, they're made from protein. All the pumps and ionic channels and gates, they're all made from protein. So basically your body is all protein. So when you're eating meat or fish or any dairy, whatever kind of products that contain protein, including nuts or seeds, or those of you who eat carbs, carbohydrates also, most of them, not all, have some protein. They all move into this amino acid pile, which will then be converted into either glucose or ketones, or will remain as an amino acid to help the cells replenish themselves, repair, because we change cells continuously. Some cells live for only a couple of minutes. Some cells, like your brain cell, they'll live to be about 50 years old, and then it gets to be replaced. So the cells have to be replaced continuously. So, but even at that, whatever extra outside of this you eat of protein as well, it will still be deposited as fat. And then your body will have the ability to convert this fat back into glucose as it needs it, if it needs it for energy. The fat is stored as triglycerides. And so triglycerides, when they measure your cholesterol in your blood, the free triglycerides, are basically this fat that either you ate and are fatty acids in your body floating, or it's fat that was converted from your liver, by your liver from your fat, and released as triglycerides. So it's going to be fat. Fat is needed everywhere in your body, so it's a useful thing. As long as it's in your blood, it is great because it can support all your cells. However, when you're talking about insulin resistance, back to the topic there, and insulin is trying to push all these nutrients into the liver to convert it to fat for storage, and the body has already run out of space for the fat cells to be filled up because all the fat cells are already completely full. Think of a fat cell as a little round thing with a little opening like a purse that you can stuff full of fat. And once it's full, it's full. You can't press any more in there. So then there will be overflow, or the fat cells start to become bigger. Some people are more fortunate and can create more fat cells. So rather than one fat cell becomes really big, they will have another fat cell. So instead of one, they will have 2 or 3 or 4. And so it's genetic. So a different way you can deposit your fats. But after a while, the body will say, okay, I'm going to put this fat just into an organ. So when it goes into an organ, think of an organ like muscles, your stomach, your pancreas, your liver, your kidneys, your heart. These can have fat in them and also around them. So to envision what this is, I was telling Lucretia, think of 2 slices of steak. So you buy 2 slices of steak. One is from a completely grass-fed cow all her life, and the other one is from a cow that was fed grain. And compare the two. The one that was only fed grass is going to be beautifully red. There will be no fat inside at all. It will not be a marbled steak. It will be just pure protein all through and red, full of blood, and maybe a very, very thin layer of fat on the outside. Now consider the typical American steak, which is going to be a grain-fed cow. It's going to be absolutely gorgeously marbled. It's desired by us, right? We like the marbled steak. We're not thinking about that. That is actually from a sick cow. That is actually from an chronic insulin-resistant cow. It will also have a pretty thick layer of fat on the outside. And in fact, all the grocery stores, the butchers are requested to remove the fat to be only like 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch steak or whatever else the USDA recommendations are. But the fat is probably significantly thicker before they trim it to the required thickness. But the meat is going to be marbled. So when you want to eat the meat and you have to choose between the two, the completely grass-fed cow's meat is going to be quite chewy. It's not going to be nearly as good tasting as what you're eating now in the American cow that has grain in it. So this is all great. And you can envision, okay, you prefer the cow's meat that it has marble in it and tastes really good because it's full of fat. Now think of it from the cow's perspective. What does it mean to the cow? So think of the shank, which is the leg going through, and I'm just cooking shank for dinner. And the shank that I'm eating is from an organic grass-fed cow, and it has no fat at all in the middle. So my husband commented on the thing the last time I cooked it, it's a little bit chewy. And indeed, it's a little bit chewy. But it is because it's from a completely grass-fed cow. Now, I don't always use grass-fed cow because I too prefer the marbling. Now, imagine a cow that was eating, getting grain. What does all that fat do in her legs? Can that cow run around in the field freely with her muscles in the leg being completely filled up with fat? Think of it that way. It tastes really good because it looks beautiful and it's marbled, but doesn't it mean that the muscles are full of fat? So what it actually does is that when you have chronic insulin resistance and your body ran out of fat cells to actually put the fat into, then you're suddenly facing, okay, it's going to go into the muscles. So if it's going into the muscles, it's going to be wonderful tasting for somebody who's eating you, but hey, it's going to make it really hard for you to actually survive. So insulin resistance, excuse, my cat is making noises here. And so insulin resistance on a chronic level is not a very healthy thing, even though we actually enjoy eating those animals that have more fat and marbling. So think of it next time when you're looking at a slice of beef. If it has a lot of marble, you're actually eating a sick cow with insulin resistance. It's not going to hurt you or harm you, but that is what you're eating. And if those of you who are familiar with eating Wagyu beef, which is famous for being massaged and I don't know, all kinds of special treatments so that the meat is beautifully marbled and whatever, yes, it's absolutely gorgeously marbled and it's a very sick cow, okay? So this is very important to understand what insulin resistance is. This is what it is. By the time it gets to be type 2 diabetes, so insulin resistance at a chronic level is type 2 diabetes, just at a lower level. But type 2 diabetes is actually the same thing, only at a higher level, meaning that your insulin is so resistant at that point that your glucose is not able to be removed from your blood. So now you're starting to have problems with glucose that is toxic if it stays in the blood for a long time. Some of the things that glucose does in the blood, for example, it destroys the eyes, the retina, and the iris of the eye, and the corneas only use glucose because there's no mitochondria in these parts, and also your red blood cells don't have mitochondria, so these cells need glucose. But when they're glucose continuously, it's like being overfed. So they lock off, and when they lock off, they become stiff. Lots of deposits happen this way around the cell walls and also your blood vessels. And once the deposits happen around the blood vessels from too much glucose, your blood vessels become really stiff and they can't expand or contract. And that will then cause potential strokes, blindness, the nerves get damaged. So you have the diabetic neuropathy, which is very directly related to the fact that the glucose destroys nerve endings in the nerves themselves from glucose being there all the time when there shouldn't be. So when you're talking about diabetes, it's just an extra step that shows already some of the more advanced symptoms. But you can have diabetic neuropathy symptoms even before you get the end stage or later stage diabetes. You can get that while you're just in the starting phases of chronic insulin resistance. There's no rhyme or reason when and where these will show up. So now let's start in last 15 minutes. Let's talk a little bit about the different kind of nutritional processes. So we have the zero carb diet, carnivore diet, and the ketogenic diet. I'm sure there are other kind of diets out there, but these are this Mediterranean, whatever. So the low carb high fat is a protocol diet, which is basically, it's not supposed to get you into ketosis, but some people may get into ketosis when they go down to 50 carbs gram. That's just because of activity level, and particularly brain activity level, how much they work. So for example, somebody who's working a lot with his or her brain is likely to enter ketosis faster than somebody who is not. It's I don't actually understand yet what the connection is there, but there's a huge discussion about brain, the energy need of the brain, and ketosis. For example, the bear, even though it's hibernating for 6 months and it's not eating, the brain is so small and requires so little energy that the bear doesn't ever get into ketosis, but humans do. So something to do with brain energy. I'm not claiming to understand it all yet, but at what point you get into ketosis depends greatly about how much you use your brain. The zero carb diet is an amazing diet if you consider, because now you have turned into a wild animal diet, a carnivore, which is what basically humans are actually scavengers, from what I understand. Scavenger means that you have stomach acid that is at a much more acidic level than for example, a lion. We have more acidic level, or at least as high of an acidic level as a lion. I think hyenas and vultures, and then humans, and then goes up in the animal front. So we actually are scavengers, which is very highly likely, because when you look at our Darwinian sense, our evolutionary path, for those who follow evolutionary path, we came from a world where we were being hunted by carnivores, such as the lions and tigers and so forth. And so when they made a kill and we wanted to eat some, when they moved away, we could then scavenge on that food. This happens in nature all the time today with other animals. Humans obviously don't scavenge, unless perhaps tribal, I have no idea. But we definitely did scavenge as we became more and more human-like. And then we started to hunt when our brain started to grow and understand what to do in order to hunt successfully. And because of our nature, when we return to eating just meat and fat, we pretty much return to our scavenging carnivorous past. So it is a very natural way for us to be. This is why a lot of people eating that diet feel extremely well, and many of us stay on it. I am on a carnivore diet, which is just adding dairy. It feels fantastic, and your brain just completely recovers. And that's primarily because this is what micronurse in particular can relate to more, because our brain is an ancient brain. And so our body must also be an ancient body. So we are doing best when we don't eat any carbohydrates. I haven't had any carbohydrate. I'm just eating sunflower seeds. That's about my only carbohydrate that I eat. I don't eat anything else. And so it is fantastic. So when you start zero carb diet, you will go through a whole lot of changes, because the carbohydrates that you eat create the gut flora for the carbohydrates. So eating, for example, probiotics when you are on the zero carb diet or on the carnivore diet makes no sense. It's different gut flora. The gut flora from the protocol diet, where you can eat carbohydrates to some degree, require the kind of bacteria that can convert fiber, which is cellulose, by the way. So it's not even really the kind of fiber that you think. It is basically bark. If it dries out, it is cellulose. And the bacteria in our gut converts that cellulose into butyrate. And butyrate is beta hydroxybutyrate. Anybody sounds familiar? It's ketones. It's a ketone body precursor. So when you're looking at your cow that is eating grass all day long, which is cellulose, guess what the cow is eating? The cow is actually on a ketogenic diet. And I know it sounds really stupid, because, hey, it's eating grass all day long. Yes, but its body is not living off of what it eats, because the bacteria has to convert it. It itself can't convert it either. So it has fermenting chambers where the bacteria will ferment everything, and they ferment it to butyrate. So the cow actually gets fatty acids from that, ketone bodies. So your cow is not a vegetarian, even though it's eating only grass. So when you're looking at it this way, it becomes extremely natural for you to see that, okay, so I may be eating some fruits and vegetables, but I don't even ferment. So what do I need? We don't ferment. That's why we have acid in our stomach. We don't have fermenting chambers. So what do? Our entire intestinal tract, which is the longest part after the stomach, has no gut bacteria in it. It's all absorbing after whatever the acid in the stomach basically broken down into enzymes and peptides and whatever else. So then it moves through the intestines in a wave form, and our intestines are very long, and we absorb all the nutrition and diet from it. And whatever we couldn't absorb, which are the fibers and maybe some more complex molecules, that goes into our colon. The colon is the shortest part of the human body. And if you know about the appendix, which is an itty bitty thing that for most of us had been removed when we were younger, like for me when I was 16, that used to have been our fermenting chamber, but it's no longer. So it's still, it can get really badly infected because it's no longer even used to getting bacteria in it. But it used to be a fermenting chamber, which we no longer have. This is one of the things that differentiates us from apes that are still fermenting. They have this huge tummy, and that is their appendix is still working as a fermenting chamber, and it's a big fermenting chamber. So we don't have that. So we only have the colon through which to ferment. And so all the bacteria that we have must be in the colon area. And we really only ferment fiber there, from which we get the butyrate. And the colon is also responsible to suck back all the water before we expel anything in the form of feces. So that is why the feces is not supposed to be liquid. Moisture is supposed to be absorbed. So if you have diarrhea, that means in the colon, it wasn't working. Nothing was absorbing the fluid, and so you have diarrhea. And so when you're looking at, even in the protocol group, the diet that you eat, in order for you to digest the fruits and vegetables, other than glucose and fructose, I'm talking fructose in a minute, you depend on your gut flora. But those of us who don't eat any vegetables and fruits, we don't have fiber. So what do we do with the bacteria in our colon that would be digesting fiber? Well, they just die. So that's why when you convert from the protocol diet into the zero carb diet or carnivore diet, you end up with a bout of diarrhea. And that's because your body is going to get rid of all those bacteria, and there's nothing for your colon to absorb from there. It just wants to wash it out. So it's like a antihistamine attack. Wash all the dead bacteria out. We don't need them. They're bad for us. So now fructose, that would be the last topic in the last 10 minutes. So fructose is not actually food for us, is what is said. But part of fructose converts to glucose. It does so in the intestinal tract. And not too much of it, but some of it convert to glucose. And the part of it that doesn't convert to glucose, so if you eat a fruit that is a whole fruit, and you have the fructose connected to fiber, it will head down to your intestines and your colon to the right place, and will be able to convert into glucose. Not all of it, most of it though, will be able to convert to glucose, and you will be just getting extra glucose out of there. But if you drink it in a juice or in a smoothie or a shake or a sauce or anything where you blended it into stuff where the fiber was separated, the molecular bonds are broken up. And because of that, the fructose can no longer convert to glucose. In that case, the fructose doesn't even head into the colon. It goes into your liver. So when it gets into the liver, what happens to the fructose? It converts to ethanol. Ethanol is what? It's an alcohol. So when you give your child a fruit juice, consider what you're doing. You're giving the child alcohol because it is going to convert to alcohol in the liver. It's a very bad thing. This is why most of the children today, a very large percent of children today, have non-alcoholic liver disease, because it is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, because it converts to alcohol. And then after that, ethanol converts to fat, triglyceride, and it stays in the liver. And the liver becomes bigger, it grows, it's an inflammatory process. So fruit juices are not healthy. They thought to be healthy because you're eating fruit. No, you're not eating fruit. You're eating basically a supplement, a fruit supplement, because everything that was part of the fruit is broken up into pieces. So it cannot be molecularly. It's not possible to put it back together the same way as it was when it was a fruit. So we have to consider what we eat and how we eat it, more importantly. So there are some members in the group who have, for example, the kind of metabolic system where they have a delay in digestion and they need to make their food into more of a paste kind of a thing. And while I understand that it can't do anything else, it is not a solution, because it then ends up, the food ends up in the wrong place. It ends up in a different place, in a different form, in a different molecular structure, and it's not going to have the same kind of connections as what it would if they ate the food in whole. Okay, so I think that our time is pretty much up, and I don't think that I can read any questions. I'm sorry. So I will take note. Hopefully all these questions are going to, maybe Terry wrote them down, I hope, and maybe all the questions will be there and the video will be there for everybody to see it later. And then for our next discussion, maybe more of you will ask more questions that we can discuss. Could be broader, could be not so. We can talk longer, we can talk shorter. Fortunately, there's no way to have more of you talk. But you're always welcome to start a conversation via what I'm doing, a webcam in the group. All right. So bye, everyone. Thanks for being pleasant, part of the whole show, and see you in the group.